It's good stuff today. 30 minutes from now, our Blazing 5. Don't forget, check engine light comes on. Don't freak out. CarShield.com, 10% off. Put in my name, Herd. CarShield.com, code Herd. A deductible may apply. Let's go to Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter, lead content strategist, Monday morning quarterback, brought to you by Mercedes-Benz. The best or nothing. So, you know, it is interesting. Every Fox promo, it's Brady against Rodgers, but I really think it is Rodgers against Tampa's defense, because Tom Brady knew this was going to be difficult, Albert. He did. He's an old guy. It's a new offense, but he didn't predict no OTAs. He didn't predict no preseason. He didn't predict this many injuries to skill people, and they're not doing outside of the red zone. They're not very good offensively. Do you believe that it's a little more right now than Tom thought he'd have to dig himself out of?
Yeah, I think to some degree, Colin, Tom's learning how the other 31 live. You know, the Patriots are so buttoned up and such a tight operation. You don't have things like jumping off sides on fourth down. You don't have things like blocked punts. You don't have things like fumbled kickoffs. Those things generally don't happen in New England, and you won't see those things happen multiple times in a game ever with the Patriots. And so I think there's been an adjustment from that standpoint for Tom Brady, no question about it. You know, and they're dealing with the injuries, which, you know, that's just more bad luck than anything. But yeah, I mean, I think there's an element of this that has taken some getting used to. And I think before that Bears game, to be honest with you, we started to see signs of what it could be with Brady getting a little bit more comfortable getting the ball downfield. I think a little bit of a regression on a short week against the Bears, but there are some signs that it's coming along. And I do think, you know, like you said, he's playing with an awfully good defense. That Bucs defense has been playing well going back to the end of last year under Todd Bowles.
So Baker Mayfield will face the best defense he has faced so far this year. Pro Football Focus has Baker as the second lowest graded offensive player for the Browns. Last week, again, when they ran it early against the Colts, he was terrific. Second half, they asked him to throw more. He got loose and actually kept that game close. Is it fair to me I think that the Baker season's been a little bit of a mirage, that they're trying to become a run team, and when they've been forced to throw it, it's kind of gotten ugly so far for Baker?
Well, I think to some degree, the coaches there are trying to rebuild Baker a little bit. And I'm not saying he needs a complete overhaul, but I know one of the focuses there, they wanted him to play calmer. They wanted him to play a less frantic game. And, to be fair to Baker, like that sort of style of play really worked for him at Oklahoma. But, they wanted him to sort of settle down. And the best way to do that was to establish the running game. And they've started to see signs that he's getting there. But this was always going to be a process, and I think that they felt like coming in, establishing the Shanahan run game was going to be huge for him. And so being able to do that behind Nick Chubb before he got hurt, now Kareem Hunt, and fixing the offensive line were job number one.
Yeah.
And that's why I think Baker's best friend has been Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach, who wherever he goes, and you can look it up, Washington, Dallas, wherever he's been, he gets there, the offensive line's fixed, the run game's fixed. And so I think so much of this was about getting Baker to settle down and doing that through the run game. And I think now that they've established that to some degree, they can start to build Baker back up, which was part of the plan all along.
People will bristle at this, and I do like Dak over Andy Dalton, but we forget now that Andy Dalton is 32 years old. That's it. Okay, he could absolutely, if he flourishes here in Dallas, there may be teams that say in the next year, we'd like to offer him some money. I think in Cincinnati, I said this yesterday, when he was asked to be a pass-first point guard, to distribute the ball in those first 4 years in Cincinnati, he was actually very effective. I think that's what he's going to be asked to do in Dallas. Now, I think Dak's better, but I think we're being hyperbolic saying the gap is large. I mean, I think Andy Dalton with this offense can be a very highly functional player. Your thoughts?
I mean, I talked to Stephen Jones about this 2 days ago, and he said that they felt incredibly fortunate based on the way the quarterback market went. For the first time in forever, there was more supply than demand out there. They felt incredibly fortunate that they were able to get Andy Dalton under the circumstances they wound up getting him. And you're right. 5 years in a row, Colin. 5 years in a row in Cincinnati. He brought them to the playoffs, right? Now, I know they didn't win when they got there, but you got to be pretty good to get them there. And what you saw in Cincinnati, I think, is exactly who he is. He's an incredibly effective bus driver. when you give him a good environment to operate in, he can do it. When he had A.J. Green and Marvin Jones and Mohamed Sanu and the tackles were Andrew Whitworth and Andre Smith,
Yep.
he was a really good quarterback.
Yep.
What happens when the offensive line crumbles? Well, then he crumbled a little bit. So, I think as much as anything else, the really interesting part about this, Colin, to me, this gives the Cowboys a great chance to assess the rest of their roster. Because if you're good around Andy Dalton, I think he's going to be just fine. They've paid a lot of guys in that roster. Obviously, Amari Cooper, Ezekiel Elliott, the offensive line, they've invested a ton up there. This is going to give them a really good chance to kind of assess how good the rest of their team is, because if you're good around Andy Dalton, I think he's shown he can do it. So
the Chiefs add Le'Veon Bell. There's some Gen X stats that say he shot. He was McCaffrey before McCaffrey. He's a great pass catcher out of the backfield. And I think he made a really smart decision to go to a highly functional, stable organization from the Jets. That's why I never liked when he left the Steelers. Do you think he shot? What do your sources say? I think as a red zone weapon, I think he could be really interesting for the Chiefs.
I think he has something left. I think so much of it about it for him is like he's going to sort of go the way the wind blows him. So if he's in a good environment, like he'll go that way. If he's in a bad environment, he's going to be a problem. And so I think that's sort of what you saw over the last couple of years with the Jets. I don't think he's what he was 4 years ago when he was averaging 4.9 yards a carry. That said, the Chiefs can really use him. They missed Damian Williams in short yardage close to the goal line. Here's the other thing. They love Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and they believe in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But if you look at Clyde Edwards-Helaire's history, he really only had 1 year as the bell cow at LSU, and that was with all these great things going on around him. And so to ask him to be that guy in year one in the NFL, I think was always a little bit much. And so now what can they do? Now they can pace him a little bit more. And now this is going to allow them to get more out of their first-round pick when you get to December and January, when you'd be worrying about him hitting that rookie wall if you were really taxing him. Now you can pull back a little bit on him and maybe get a little bit more from him when you get to the playoffs.
Yeah, that's a really, really good point. Albert Breer joining us. So I said this week, Alex Smith will win Comeback Player of the Year. I'll give Cam Newton Comeback Player of the Year. I think he's been terrific, and I've been a doubter forever. And then he got COVID, and I thought, oh, brother, don't lose Bill. Don't lose the locker room on this. Just don't. And then I thought to myself, I wonder if, Bill, his tolerance for stuff like that with veterans is pretty low. Did he lose any equity in the locker room? Is everybody still all in on Cam Newton in New England?
Yeah, I think that they are. Look, like this isn't just a one-year thing, too. I mean, his history, if you really dig into it, you talk to people in Carolina, he was actually a really good locker room guy there. Like if you talk to the Greg Olsons, the Ryan Khalils, the Thomas Davises, the Luke Kuechly's, the guys who were foundation pieces with him in Carolina, they all love him. And so, I think that the Patriots look at Cam Newton as a guy who potentially could be their quarterback for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And at the very least, could be somebody who helps them get to the next guy, sort of the same way that Alex Smith was for the Kansas City Chiefs and getting them to Patrick Mahomes. And the Patriots are in an interesting spot now. I actually think, Colin, and this is sort of an interesting twist, the Dwayne Haskins benching in Washington could reverberate in New England. Before you were sort of wondering, where's the market for Cam Newton going to be after the season? Now, Washington's future at quarterback looks wide open. Their head coach is Ron Rivera. Their offensive coordinator, Scott Turner. And now the Patriots actually have something to worry about as far as where Cam Newton could go after the year. And so I think this storyline only gets more interesting as we go on.
Yeah, I said this to Joy this week. I'm not there yet, but I'm close. If Cam beats Denver, if Cam for the next 2 weeks plays really well, and I feel like, okay, I've got a new guy here. Do they sit down and just offer him and just say, listen, here's a 2-year deal. We may draft a quarterback, Cam. We're going to try to. But for 2 years, we're building around you. Do you think they would start talks in a couple of weeks if he flourished against, let's say, Denver this weekend?
I wouldn't be surprised if they did what they did with Jimmy Garoppolo. And Jimmy Garoppolo, before they traded him, they'd offered him like a fair kind of bridge deal. And he turned it down, and he wound up winning in that scenario, became a starter in San Francisco, got paid there. But it wouldn't surprise me if they offered him some sort of bridge deal that sort of takes care of him the next few years, gets him some money early, takes some of that injury risk that he's facing the rest of the year off of his plate. And I think it would make all the sense in the world to do that, Colin, for a couple different reasons. Number one, the cap's going to go down next year because of the revenue shortfall. So if you can dump some money into this year where you still have some cap space and they still have like between $25 and $30 million in cap space, I think you do it. And then it allows you to sort of plan fiscally around Cam for the next few years. And again, I think the Alex Smith comp in Kansas City is the right one, where we're really happy with our quarterback right now, and maybe he's the long-term answer, and maybe he gets back to being MVP Cam. But at the very least, we've got a guy we're happy with for now that's going to help us get to the next guy. That's why we bring him on. All sorts of good insight. Albert Breer, senior NFL guy, lead content dude, Monday Morning Quarterback. Have a great week. This is a really good NFL weekend. That's right, yeah. A lot of clarity this weekend. Thanks, Albert. All right, thanks, Colin. Enjoy the weekend. Coming up next, they got housed by Kansas City, and everybody kind of peeled back some of their stock on the Ravens. I understand a little bit of that. Let's explore what they actually are this morning. They're not quite the same. We'll tell you why, plus Blazing 5, top of the hour on a Friday. Thanks so much for joining us. Here's the thing about home security companies. They're confusing. They're expensive. They throw technicians at you and salespeople at you, and nobody likes those guys. Or women. Most trap you with high prices, tricky contracts, lousy customer service. That is not what SimpliSafe does. It takes you 40 minutes. You order from SimpliSafe. Their website's amazing. You can put this up in 40 minutes. Nick Wright, who's not handy, told me. He went to their website. We had a conversation about this off the air. He's like, it's amazing how easy it is to put SimpliSafe into your house. No technician required. Peel and stick the sensors exactly where you need them. Oh, by the way, this all starts at $15 a month. U.S. News and World Report called SimpliSafe the best overall home security of 2020. Check it out right now. You can get a free HD camera. A free HD camera. How? Go to simplysafecolin.com. Put my name in. SimpliSafeColim.com. An arsenal of sensors and cameras to blanket every room, window, and door. SimpliSafe.